Masashi, An Ennin Mystery, 68 by Ben Stevens. The priest poured out the thick green tea. Outside of this bamboo tea room attached to the temple, the sky was low, dark grey and heavy, threatening yet more snow. Yet inside it was pleasantly warm and cosy. A little fire burning in the sunken pit beneath the ceremonial teapot in the centre of the room, bathing our surroundings in a gentle light. "It was good of you to visit Ennin-sensei," said the priest in a low, calm voice. Although he was hardly old, and still he somehow conveyed the impression of being wise beyond his years. "And I also have the honor of again meeting your servant, Kukai-san, who writes of your cases together so expertly." At this I made some modest display of deference. "And yet Kukai-san has not written about Masashi, once Japan's most feared, infamous swordsman?" "He has not," returned my master with a secretive smile. "But perhaps that account is coming soon, finally." So, saying these words, my master glanced at me, and I remembered. I had not long been in my master's employ. Indeed, it was almost right at the start of our time together when we chanced upon the legendary Masashi. He was about to duel with another expert swordsman, or ronin. That is, a samurai who has no master. Deprived of gainful employment, such men drift about from place to place, feeling perpetually aggrieved, indignant, and thus quick to take offence at any possible slight, real or imagined. And they proudly wear their two swords, the long katana and the shorter tanto. Although the tanto is said to be able to pierce armor, a samurai commonly uses it when they find themselves obliged to commit seppuku, or what the gaijin or foreigner often refers to as harakiri, belly cutting. Such ritual suicide automatically follows anything a samurai considers too shameful to bear, such as defeat. Masashi was not yet 30, but already a legendary figure. Clad in a filthy blue kimono, with long matted hair loosely tied in a top knot, looking at him, it was easy to believe the rumor that he had never even bathed. So determined was he never to be taken by surprise by an adversary. He slept holding his swords, it was said, which he valued more highly than anything or anyone, as though, as many a samurai claims, his treasured weapons really did possess their own soul. His eyes were narrow and piercing. His skin was dirty, the nails and knuckles of his powerful fingers all but black with grime. He faced his opponent, a man of about the same age as himself, who held his katana in front of him. The two swordsmen seemed to be waiting for something, and then at once a bell was struck at a temple nearby. This seemed to be the signal, for Masashi's opponent at once moved toward him, expertly raising his weapon for a fatal strike. Masashi did not even seem to move, yet in the very next moment, his opponent fell down in front of him, his very innards slopping out from the front of his kimono. With a cold smile, Masashi stepped to one side, briefly surveying his fallen adversary and the steaming pile of guts before consenting to slice off that man's head with another blurred movement of his katana. Then he surveyed the gathering crowd, his narrow eyes issuing a silent challenge to any other man who wished to engage him in combat. I met his stare just for a split second and then immediately looked away. The crowd dispersed, and my master and I returned to the inn where we were staying. "Disgusting, Kukai," said my master at length, as we relaxed in our shared room. "Master?" I queried. "That ronin, Masashi," returned my master with a gesture of irritation. "That man he just killed was in no way his equal. That was murder, pure and simple." I raised my eyebrows at this comment. It hardly seemed safe to say such words, even in the relative privacy of our rented room. Masashi's opponent had accepted the challenge, master, I ventured. "He could hardly refuse, Kukai," retorted my master instantly. No ronin can resist an invitation to combat, for that is the most cowardly thing of all. No, a ronin must fight, even if he knows that only certain death awaits him. This was certainly true, and I made no further comment. A short while later, my master and I headed downstairs to the communal dining room. There were low tables set up on the tatami mat, and attractive young waitresses brought jars of sake and various dishes to the waiting guests. I had just picked up a pair of chopsticks in eager readiness to eat when Masashi entered the large room. Instantly, the loud babble of conversation all but ceased. Masashi knelt down at an empty table, two waitresses rushing to serve him. He wore the two swords by his side, and as his cold gaze swept the room, every man looked away. Still, as the conversation resumed and the guests drank their sake, a few men dared to venture over to Masashi's table to give him fawning compliments and refill his cup. Masashi accepted such treatment with an imperious nod, also attended to at all times by the two waitresses, who ultimately sat either side of him, stroking his arms and whispering in his ear. Later, I had no doubt the swordsman would be going to bed with either one, or even both of them, but his swords would be lying there right beside his futon, ready to be snatched up at a moment's notice. My master said virtually nothing as he ate, and I noticed that his gaze frequently stole across to the infamous ronin. Finally, my master got up, and taking our flask of sake, strolled across to Masashi's table. I could hardly believe that the proud Ennin sensei was about to join the rest of the sycophants in flattering the dangerous killer. But then my eyes widened in disbelief as my master emptied the flask of sake all over Masashi's table. Everywhere, in fact, except for his cup. "Coward!" said my master coldly, as Masashi instantly leapt to his feet, his hand going for his long sword. "Oh, not in here, sir, I beg you," cried the owner of the inn, at once appearing from a doorway. Masashi's hand paused by the handle of his katana, and he breathed deeply. "I give you just this one chance, stranger," he said then. "I see you are not a samurai or ronin. Maybe you have just had too much to drink, but if you were to get down on your knees, place your hands before you and bow your head right down to the tatami as you repeatedly beg me for forgiveness, I may just spare your life." "On the contrary," returned my master, his gaze dark and dangerous, as he readily met the ronin's stare. "I will meet you tomorrow at the same time and the same place where you murdered that man today, and there I will defeat you, so that all Japan will finally become aware that the swordsman named Masashi can be beaten." "Your name?" asked the ronin. "Ennin." At this, Masashi looked briefly surprised. "I have heard of you. You're some sort of investigator?" The ronin shrugged. "And now you wish to throw your life away, it would seem. Look at you, you don't even have a sword." "I will defeat you," repeated my master. "Just be there on time." "To be late is the gravest insult of all," returned Masashi, through clenched teeth. "Such a slight is simply unimaginable. It could never be forgiven." "When the bell tolls, we will fight," declared my master. "When the bell tolls, Ennin, you will die," said the ronin flatly, as the entire room listened with bated breath. "You see this?" With these three words, Masashi raised up the right sleeve of his kimono. A pale scar gleamed there upon his filthy forearm. "I made this scar myself, and I have vowed that no one else will ever scar me again," he said then. "I have cut down scores of men so far, and not one of them has ever touched me with their sword. It is too late for you to go back now, but why do you wish to throw away your life so?" "Because you need a lesson, young man, that is why," said my master. "You are nothing but a cocksure little upstart, earning your wretched reputation by cutting down men whom you know pose no real challenge to you. Well, tomorrow you will know true humiliation. Some things, you know, are worse than death." Masashi's face had gone almost white with fury, his clenched jaw trembling. But at my master's final words he looked almost confused. Then shaking his head, he sat back down. "We have said all that needs to be said, Ennin. Tomorrow I will allow you to observe your guts slopping out of your abdomen, while I decide whether or not to end your agony by chopping off your head." My master did not even deign to reply. He merely turned his back on the young ronin and returned to our table. "Master, for pity's sake," I began in a low voice. I could not help myself. I just could not understand why my master was throwing away his life so casually. "Quiet, Kukai," said my master, taking a sip of sake. Then he used his chopsticks to pick up a morsel of food. "This is really most excellent sashimi," he observed. The other men sitting in the room shot him cautious, curious glances, no doubt wondering, as was I, why a man should wish to commit what basically amounted to suicide. I sat and watched as my master proceeded to drink himself into a blind stupor. The other customers left, including the ronin, who still had both waitresses accompanying him. I apologize, Kukai, if I spoke harshly to you earlier," slurred my master, his gaze bleary as he tried to look me in the eye. "Please, master, I beg of you, don't fight that man," I pleaded. I'd not known him so long, but he'd saved my life, and I'd already recognized that he was a truly extraordinary individual. As such, he'd also garnered some modest fame, but a swordsman fit to challenge the legendary Masashi? I doubted there was such a man in the whole of Japan. I must, rasped my master, slowly shaking his head from side to side. He must learn. It is not too late to turn from a bad path. I had no idea what my master was talking about. In any case, he lapsed into unconsciousness a few moments later. Observed by the open-mouthed innkeeper, who clearly had already consigned my master to the grave, I slung my master across one shoulder, thus carrying him back to our room. The following morning, my master was terse and morose. His hangover must have been all but crippling, though he made no mention of it. The bell of the temple nearby was rung at noon, and then at 6 o'clock in the evening, but it was at noon precisely that my master was scheduled to fight Masashi. At last I felt I had to point out the obvious. "Master," I said, "you have no sword." "I do not," said my master in a low voice, massaging his temples with his fingers. "Kukai, I beg of you, go out and find me a stout, heavy stick." "Master?" "Kukai," said my master slowly, shooting me one of his dark looks, "kindly just do as I ask without further question." "Yes, master," I quietly replied. I went out, venturing into the wood, growing right behind the inn, where we and that ronin were staying. I had the knife I always carry within my kimono, so that I quickly found and cut the desired item. "Thank you, Kukai," said my master upon my return. In my absence, I was shocked to observe that he'd ordered a flask of sake to be delivered to our room. "Would you care for a drink?" he asked me, filling 2 cups. "No, master, I would not," I said flatly. "Suit yourself," shrugged my master, downing one drink and then immediately picking up the other. "Master, the temple bell!" I cried as I heard it bong. I had no idea we were so late. This was a truly terrible insult which no samurai or ronin would ever forgive. And as if the situation was not bleak enough already. "Oh, let him wait," sighed my master, refilling both cups. "Come, Kukai, please have a drink." I sat down beside him, as finally my eyes became blurry with tears. "You saved my life, master, and after the death of my wife and daughter, when all I really wanted to do was to die myself, you gave me a new purpose, a new existence. And now you wish me to join you in getting drunk, as you make yourself deliberately late for a meeting with a man who will kill you?" "Drink, Kukai," chortled my master, pushing the cup into my right hand. "You have suffered tragedy, I don't deny that. But all the same, now is not the time to take life so seriously." I gave up. I drank deeply and quickly. At once my master refilled my cup. "It was good knowing you, master," I said quietly. "It really was. I'm glad you're my master. Now, when we leave, I beg of you to walk some distance behind me, carrying this stout piece of wood. When I call for you, hurry to bring it to me." "You're about to fight Japan's finest swordsman armed with a stick of wood, master," I blurted. "I am," nodded my master. "It will do more damage than a mere katana, of that I'm certain." I decided now that this man I'd recently been serving was actually insane. There was no other reason for his words and his lunatic actions. "Come, Kukai," said my master then, rising unsteadily to his feet. "We are already late enough." "Indeed we are, master," I muttered, reflecting that Masashi must by now be virtually incandescent with rage. We left the inn and walked up the leafy lane to the predesignated meeting spot. I followed my master, carrying the piece of wood, as per his request. His gait was a little unsteady, betraying the several cups of sake he'd drunk, though it was only a little past noon. There was Masashi. A small crowd waiting behind him. "You are late," he yelled, his face a mask of fury. There was not a trace of the cold, calm deliberation I'd seen just the previous day when he'd killed his latest victim. "Oh, shut up," retorted my master, hiccuping. "What?" cried the ronin. "Face me now, you bastard!" Then he appeared suddenly uncertain, an expression more than reflected in the faces of the observing crowd. "But your weapon, where is it?" he demanded. "Oh, Kukai," said my master, glancing back at me. I ran forward at once, pressing the stout length of wood into his hand. "Enough! Enough!" the ronin shrieked. This steely killer obviously pushed beyond endurance. "Never has anyone insulted me as you have. You die now." And with these words he rushed at my master with his sword held high. I closed my eyes. There came a sharp cry of pain. I opened my eyes to see Masashi crouched upon the ground, clutching his stomach, his long sword lying there beside him. "You have always faced your opponent with the exact same mindset," said my master calmly, standing above him with a stick in hand. And no longer was his voice slurred. All I needed to do was to disturb that particular mental equilibrium with my later rival, apparent drunkenness, and ridiculous weapon, and all your fine swordsmanship would be as chaff. "And now, Masashi, I said yesterday evening that some things are worse than death. Let me now demonstrate exactly what I mean by that." And my master proceeded to dish out such a thorough thrashing with that stick of his that it was all I could do to observe it. He did not strike the ronin's head once, and there was nothing like a fatal blow, but he must have welted nearly every other part of Masashi's body. Finally, that young swordsman was curled up in a ball, crying out, "Kill me, Ennin! Just kill me and be done with it! Take my sword and cut off my head. For pity's sake, have you not caused me shame enough?" "I do not want to kill you," rasped my master with such vehemence that the crowd watching all but took a step back. "I want you to live, and live better, to spend the rest of your life atoning for the deaths and chaos you have caused so far, to pursue a path infinitely more noble." Finally the ronin began to weep. "Just kill me, please," he begged. "I cannot bear the shame." "No," said my master, "and I throw away your small sword now so that you cannot kill yourself. You are young, and you have been foolish, but that is a part of youth. Now change your ways and your very mindset. Venture off to some mountain, some remote place, and there meditate and realize what it is you really are here to accomplish, and forget all about this utter nonsense of ritual suicide, or else you truly are nothing but a coward." With these final words, my master hurled the tanto he'd snatched from Masashi's belt into some undergrowth. "Come, Kukai," he said then. "We need to return to the inn to settle our bill." "Yes, a foolish, silly young man, but nevertheless one who will always be grateful to you, Ennin-sensei," said the priest, as he again filled our cups with thick green tea. "This is truly delicious," returned my master. "But about that, sometimes all we need as human beings is a little direction." "You are being too modest, Ennin-sensei," smiled the priest gently. He reached out to feed the small fire in the sunken pit with a few sticks. As he did so, the right-hand sleeve of his kimono stretched up to reveal a white scar upon his forearm. "Always I will be grateful," he finished, as the remaining tea in the ornate metal kettle gently bubbled away.